People do like, are we live yet?
You don't hear Chicago, do you?
I do not. So you're going to have to tell
we
me.
are on.
Excellent. Well, welcome to the show, everybody. It's HAL SPARKS Mega Worldwide radio program in show form. I'm speaking as fast as I can to bring everybody in because it's Saturday. And Johnny Million is with me. And we got a lot going on. The least of which is, that there's extraordinary movement in Ukraine next hour. I'm being ironic when I say that. And as Zelensky is in Japan meeting with the G7 leaders, which, by the way, in many ways explains Germany's reticence over this last little bit, and they're kind of cozying up to Russia all this time. Part of the issue that we have with how they were acting is, are they dumb or are they doing it on purpose? And when it's a dude you meet...
I think my wife thinks that about me all the time.
Yes, on an individual level, she's right. But when you're talking about like multiple administrations in a row of a country, or multiple ways that the voters go, or it gets harder and harder to just go, it's a big oopsie. And one of Germany's big issues is that if Ukraine is on its feet and becomes a regular, normal, valuable member of the EU, it immediately puts Germany in a secondary, if not, third or fourth position in its importance in the European Union because of the volume of output that is coming from that will, in terms of everything from foodstuffs to fuel to technology that will be coming out of Ukraine, and that seems to be, I would say, a good motivating factor on a financial level and on a power base. No country wants to give up some reins, especially when they're tenuous to begin with. There's Flora joining Johnny Million on his lap, as you do.
Can you hear her grumbling?
I can. I thought it was my stomach for a second, but I'm okay. Yeah, okay, that wasn't my stomach. That was definitely, it might have been another part of my anatomy, but it was not my stomach. And I think we're up on Twitch now, kind of. Nope, it's being very weird this morning. There's issues with Twitch, but we'll be fine. So we have a lot to discuss with Philip Bittner this morning when he comes on in the next hour, if he can. There's always a lot of stuff going on. We've had technical issues on a bunch of fronts. Getting him on the regular show this week. Yeah. Not just the internet and whatnot, and the fact that it seems to be in the hands of a rude, conspiratorially minded billionaire who seems to think that if he can buy the pathways to power, he can control the information that gives him and maintains his power. I don't know where people get that idea from, buddy.
We just got two crazy super chats. One from the usual suspects, and I say that with love. Lisa Mia Moore.
Thank you, Lisa Mia Moore.
And Hal Vickery.
Oh, Hal Vickery, thank you so much. Love you. Big hugs to everybody and welcome. You can always support the show by becoming a Patreon supporter, patreon.com/HalSparks. And then, of course, you can subscribe on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, it doesn't cost you a dime. Unless you're, of course, subscribing to Johnny Million as well, which you would go to twitch.tv/.
Then it's Johnny Million. Cost you through the nose.
It is. It's gonna it's gonna be worth the penny. Anyways, I kid. It's actually, I think it's like $4.95 or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Of which we keep like
a month. Yeah, we get like $2 of.
If. Yeah. All right. So lots of show, like I said this morning. Philip Bittner will be joining us. The big story, of course, this week is, I don't know if you've heard this, Johnny Million, but apparently the U.S. government and worse, the FBI and the Department of Justice have been weaponized against the American people. And
no way.
Yeah. And it was obviously done to target conservatives primarily. I'm sure there was some collateral damage with the occasional, hyper left-winger who, has a bomb factory in their basement. But the rest Thank you, Robert Brunswick. Love to Al, Johnny, and love and good health to Chud. Yes, and of course Flora as well. I would say we'll just extend that love because she's representing for the cats this morning.
Yes.
The the majority of them were targeted during the Trump administration, and then shortly thereafter, obviously, in the follow-up to January 6th. Now, I know what you're thinking, Johnny Million. You're thinking, yeah, but wasn't Trump president during that time, and didn't he switch the FBI leadership and the DOJ leadership to
Like
sycophants?
twice?
Yeah, sycophants who support him, and he was looking for his Roy Cohn in the DOJ and
Yeah.
his Kim Jong-un general in the FBI and everywhere else. I know you're thinking that, and I know that that's true and a material reality that no one can deny except seemingly Jim Jordan. But the story seems to be that the FBI, even though they were getting their marching orders from the king of the maggots, Donald Trump, didn't apparently get the message that they were supposed to leave those folks alone. And specifically, in some cases, according to the FBI whistleblowers that were in this hearing this
I mean,
week.
the paid informants?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Beyond the paid informants. Okay. Look, we've all seen 80s cop movies where somebody slips somebody a 20 and they're to get some information, and the guy's like,
You never
my
saw me here, okay?
My memory's a little foggy, and then they grab him by the shirt collar, right?
How about now?
How about now? Yeah. Like, how's this? Yeah. And the
I
good
gotta
cop-
load these boxes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right, that's the Law and Order thing, where immediately when your dialogue is done, you immediately get an errand.
Mm-hmm.
I got a phone call right now, and then they just vanish so that the detectives can talk freely without them in earshot. Right, we've all seen that. We know how that's how things work. So it's fascinating to me that these guys in particular, and I have to say, I know everybody has an issue with the witnesses, the fact that they were paid by Kash Patel. That all their bills are being paid by Kash Patel, it seems. And
They have families to feed.
yes, they do have families to feed. It is true. To whom? I don't know who they're feeding their families to. It's hard. It's scary. But
It's a weird move.
it's a weird move. It is gross. I'm not for it. I don't believe in that people should feed their families to anything. Gargoyles, dragons, cannibals. It's just wrong. Anyways, so these guys, one of the things that I'm having a hard time tracking down, and you know me, Johnny Million, I get wonky about stuff. And when something makes me do that kind of like dog head twist, where I'm like, you what? And they go, I was suspended on the first day of the job. They transferred me to this job, and then they waited till I was there to transfer me, and then they wouldn't let me get my personal belongings, and my family were freezing, and it was Wisconsin, and we couldn't get our coats. And for weeks, and I have to say, I find that very hard to believe. And if only because of just how Trump was running on this like pro law enforcement, even though he sent his supporters to attack them. I understand. He's running on this pro law enforcement thing, and the people he put in charge while he was in there continued in their positions after January 6th, after the 21st of February when Biden was, or January when Biden was sworn in. So, is it just another case of the best people, # the best people with Donald Trump? Or are these people full of beans? And I have to say, because the FBI's response is if we let somebody go or we deny them their security clearance, it's because we have followed specific rules and we stuck to them, and these people know what they sign up for, and if you violate those rules, that's the result of it. But even nobody's talking about the whole we kept their belongings. Sure, we kept their stuff. I kept it in a meat locker. See, I kept their clothes in there to show them what's what, to make an example of them, so nobody else tries to, take an assignment in another district. It's so weird. What if should I take this assignment in another district? What if you guys keep my stuff? It just seems goofy. It seems like that these guys were engaged in some rather hinky behavior, and that hinky behavior was discovered after they had been summarily, to use a Chicago-friendly term, if you ever watched The Fugitive, right? It's I honest to God, I have been trying to track down exactly why, specifically, the multiple reasons why these three guys lost their security clearances, and then eventually were suspended beyond that. And usually it's like they lost their security clearances because they can't be trusted. And I have an idea about that one. I'll share that after the break. But there's also I don't believe them. And the reason I don't believe them is because there is no evidence that they produce. They just tell these anecdotal narrative stories about stuff. But, well, I'll talk about it after the break. We have to take a break because it's so lame, it aggravates me. But weaponization of the government, and the weaponization of the establishment and deep state establishment, and also hashtag deep state establishment. We'll be back right after this. Drives me crazy. It's the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Hold on. And I go to here. All right. Are we at break?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, and now I can hear Chicago again. Excellent.
Okay.
Yay.
I fixed it on this end. It's so weird. John, I literally can hear you coming from the web page, which is my audio source. But I have to put them in Streamlabs and monitor them through there to hear it. So the thing that will probably be true of Phil as well, which is going to be a tooth pull. It's just
pullier than usual.
And yes, and by the way, I was going to tell you the reason why Apple is so hard to route audio in and through things is because Apple Records sued Apple over the name early on, back in the 70s and 80s.
I remember that.
Yeah. And one of the concessions Apple made was not being able to record on the devices.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that they could take Apple's business as a recording entity. And they started sampling.
We got 30 seconds, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And when they sampled their little error sounds that you can choose from, because that was one of the first things they gave you, was several to choose from. One of them is called Sosumi. And everybody thought it was a Japanese pluck of a string or something like that, and it's really just a pun on Sosumi.
Wow.
Yep, the Sosumi sound is a middle finger to Apple Records.
Welcome back to the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
All right, so I've been diving into this, and by the way, I want to say thank you and love you to all the people in our chat for gathering around, sharing the show, spreading us around, letting people know. That rhymed accidentally, and I was very excited. The House Republicans under Jim GYM Jordan released an 80-page report right in the middle of me having to read the entire Durham report. And by the way, for those people that watch my regular live stream and complain that I let them get like 2 sentences out and then I pause and I interject something, it's because that's how often they lie. That's how often they obfuscate or exaggerate or anything. And I have a hard time. I mean, the whole point of my job is to not let that stuff go when other people do it. And in an interview, when somebody's on a television show, they can gish gallop. But when you're responding to a video live, the one thing I can do is I can pause a gish gallop, and it's lovely. It's one of the joys of my job as a live streamer when I do the show on the regular, is that I can stop a gish gallop in its tracks and go and spend, if I want to, a half hour explaining how that little subtle lie that they always tell in this one place all the time, in this line of lies that they always march out at the same time, is not only complete fabrication, or a massive example of their ignorance in the case of somebody like Glenn Beck or something like that, where they just are intentionally dumb, but also in many ways is grotesque in its assertion in the first place, that that they are saying things that are not just lame or they should know better, but if you think them through, are awful.
Good God, yes.
Just awful. If you think through it with any depth. Jim Jordan is one of those people, considering his history at Ohio State and his looking the other way while sexual assault continued unabated during his time there, and he's never answered to it. And for some reason, he can. The fact that he dodges that entire line of questioning on the regular while constantly being in a mild state of undress is never lost on me. That the guy won't wear a jacket like he's halfway towards naked after a history of that seems even weirder in that context. See what I mean? Those things bug me. So when they, the Durham report is taking me a long time to go through because there is so much detailed baloney in it. There are so many narrative chunks that express this we all know narrative, which Republicans run on these days.
Oh yeah,
this like we all know the
knows that
that
this person's in that person's pocket.
Exactly, or even quite frankly, we all know the Hunter Biden. It's been verified. That kind of stuff. It is absolutely not. Go back and I watched my video about the Washington Post story where they quote unquote how the Washington Post verified the laptop when they never saw it, saw a hard drive named laptop, which is hilarious, that had all the files in it put in 3 folders, salacious business crimes and stuff, as if he put them in that order. Of course, the contents of that hard drive are more than the capacity of the hard drive that was allegedly dropped off, and there is no chain of metadata in any of the emails to show where they came from or where they went through on their way to arriving on that hard drive. Period. End of story. Their own experts said it was a forensic nightmare.
What if they ran on the issues and had policies that people wanted to vote for?
Well, that explains. I think that's the question that bounces around in my head, like the Tasmanian devil, every time. Yeah, every time Ted Cruz talks about Bud Light, because some people follow me on Twitter at HAL, as they follow you on Twitter, Johnny Million, will notice that I pointed out that he was raging about this week or something, and he was making a joke about going to Cancun and all these kind of things. And my response was, what do you think he's going to do? Talk about the economy? We just found out, by the way, that the March numbers, or I believe, no, the April numbers were and March were better in terms of unemployment, because the tick up in unemployment claims that they were saying would moderate the number of the employment numbers that were going up turned out to be fraudulent. In Massachusetts, there were massive attempts to defraud the unemployment insurance there, and it 3,000 of them, and it statistically drove up the unemployment numbers in the country. New requests for unemployment insurance that came in, and that made people make different financial decisions. So, anyways, this all ties into sort of the FBI and DOJ weaponization story that they're telling, and this sort of hinky background where you're trying to dig into what. The FBI can only respond one way to what these guys say, which is they said they followed an objective administrative process with these guys, which again sort of goes to the idea that conservatives get kicked off of YouTube or Twitch or any of these sites all the time. They do not. They do not. People do not get kicked off of YouTube for their conservative values. What they get kicked off of is apparently their vocabulary, that they are unable to express their conservative ideals, if you can even call them that, if they are genuinely that. I would argue that probably conservatives feel towards them the way I feel towards progressives, but that they can't even say what they need to say without using bigoted language or calls to violence. Or
someone in the chat, Bertha Adamson, just said they have policies. They just can't say what they are because most citizens would hate them and tar and feather them and drive them out of the country on a rail.
Right. Look, and great to, easily we can cite the Mike Lee, saying he's going to get rid of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. that they want to destroy it. They've got to tear it down. Well, of course. The irony that they're able to do it with the FBI right now, or they think they are, I actually think it's shunning more voters than they think. And especially as the FBI continues doing its job catching, gun runners and money launderers and drug dealers and child pornographers and sex traffickers and all that kind of stuff, which is what they do on the regular. It's 80% serial killers and cross state line criminal gangs and that kind of stuff. That's what they do all the time. They've got about 3% that they've had to pull people off lines. New people, by the way, people without seniority, people without long case histories, like these guys that were witnesses, and they put them on the Jan 6 case because there was so much evidence. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing that I find that was missing from, all three of them complained that they were pulled off of whatever case they were working on and put on Jan 6ers. Well, one of the reasons is because there was, as we saw, there was 46,000 hours of just surveillance footage to go through. That doesn't even count the Facebook Live videos that most of these idiots that are in jail right now filmed themselves committing these crimes. Yes. Most of the Jan 6ers were the single greatest source of their own prosecutorial
we're here
evidence.
Live. We're taking the country back.
That we're going to put a bullet in Nancy Pelosi's brain, and this is me taking a dump in the rotunda, and look at my Confederate flag, and here we go.
See that poop in the stairwell? That's
mine.
Me.
That's right. And then their defense attorney that they have been provided or paid for or had someone or Kash Patel paid for, I suppose. We'll find out later through Trump friends, because Trump's not doling out any money.
No.
Convince, show up, and their only argument is, look, of course he said that. People said a lot of things that day, Your Honor, but we don't have access to that excrement because a Democratic congressperson came through there and hosed the place down in an attempt to clean, if that's the word, get rid of evidence is what we call it, Your Honor. That by picking up trash, they eliminated evidence that should be exculpatory, because we believe that there would be fingerprints of FBI agents on that garbage that they threw in that kind of stuff. It's just absurd. And by the way, like any other moronic defendant that was engaged in violence against their fellow Americans and police officers, the judges they're seeing, whether they are Obama appointed or Trump appointed or Bush appointed, or they've been sitting around since Bush won or during Clinton, or aging Reagan appointees, whatever happens, they're all sitting there looking at these Jan 6 defendants and going, you want me to let him play the video of you saying what you said again?
Yeah.
You can plead, or you can waste our time. The more you waste our time, the more time we're going to give you, because you admitted to it, did you not? And then they go, it was actually mine. It was. I brought some, Your Honor. I actually saved it and had it bronzed. So I have been scouring, as best I can, right-wing sites that have most of the information about these guys. And none of them explain any more than just, we moved there, they took my clothes and they wouldn't give them back. They suspended me. Now, one of the things that did come up was that there's O'Boyle, there's a guy named, ironically, Friend, and this guy Marcus Allen. And those three guys are being...
the running back?
No, different Marcus Allen totally.
Okay.
Yeah. Although, I have no idea about the sports history of any of these guys. But I will say that because they play sports ball at some point, they're big, tough guys. So Jim Jordan was basically pulling a Tucker Carlson with Matt Gaetz. We'll go to break. When we come back, we'll have a better... I'll help you frame what you're saying. Or when Don Jr. was on Sean Hannity's show, where they get off topic, and so they go to break and come back a little, Now, say it so you won't legally get in trouble again. One of the things they pointed out was the difference between suspended and their clearance suspended, which sounds like the FBI is following a regular chain of action. Until we can investigate what you're doing, What you did would mean you can't have a security clearance anymore.
Right.
And
Which
then
means
once
you can't work anywhere in the whole wide world.
And no, you can't. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And they're all special agents because they were either on loan or got temporary badges like Clarice Starling while working as police officers on these because they'd worked with SWAT and other stuff. So the FBI sometimes needs, law enforcement personnel to fill out the ranks in certain areas because they don't have enough FBI agents for it. So they make you a special agent, but you're on loan. It seems like these guys, and all I could find is that that's exactly what these guys were. They were all former Army that went on to become cops, and that they sought to be in the FBI in some ways to defend Jan 6ers. Like they felt like, I'll be a mole for President Trump. Which is, employment-wise in law enforcement, I would argue, problematic. To use a word I
Always
hate.
goes well.
It does. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. I'm farm links at me, kids. Throw links my way if you can find out anything that explains any depth to what they're talking about beyond their statements. Yeah, it's interesting how these guys just feel like they can circumvent the chain of command and not as whistleblowers, just to like shut down investigations. And one of the hinkiest ones was, and I think it's the guy Friend, what's his name? Yeah, Steve Friend, who was on Rob Schmidt's show on Newsmax yesterday, and I covered a little bit of it. His big complaint was that they were using SWAT teams to go after certain Jan 6ers, and he thought it was unnecessary, that these people were willing to turn themselves in, and they should have just been allowed. Okay, first of all, are you talking to them when you're not supposed to be? As an agent, are you going around, like, are you calling them on
Somebody
the phone?
says Louis Friend.
60 seconds, guys.
Yes, right, the fool's gold. Yes, his name was Louis Friend. He was blonde hair, 6'2", eyes blue, eyes pale blue. That's all I can remember. now.
Abby Normal.
No, Louis Friend is the name that Hannibal Lecter gives for Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs.
Oh.
I don't know if they're any relation.
Probably.
Your
It tracks.
anagrams are showing, Doctor. Louis Friend, miss the rest of me? As in, you rented that storage facility? You let me know when we're back, because you're like...
He said close. You can't hear him again?
If I don't,
Okay.
I think we're okay. Because I heard music going out, or you should be all right.
Yeah.
10 seconds.
10
Hey,
seconds.
there, I hear him just fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, good. I just get nervous.
10 seconds of love.
10 seconds of
10
love.
seconds of love.
Remember, that was the joke we made about this
You're
thing, 10
locked
seconds
into
of
the
love.
Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Now, there's a lot that's, there's just a lot of details that need to be filled out. Again, extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence, and I gotta say, after watching the entirety of the House weaponization and the monsterization of the DOJ and the FBI committee run by, I really watch for Stacey Plaskett's moments because she's awesome. She's super fun. And I was saying that if she wasn't a great delegate for the Virgin Islands, she would be a great mayor of Zero F's Town because of just how she does not...
I think I've seen her.
Yes, you have. And I, so one of the guys, I was saying during the break, this guy, Steve Friend, who was, all of these guys seem to be exemplary of why these guys lost their clearance, was that his complaint was the FBI was sending SWAT teams to arrest people involved in January 6th that had said they would voluntarily turn themselves in. Now, one need only go to the Law and Crime YouTube channel or police activity YouTube channel, or go watch Donut Operator, or go just do a Google search on ambushed police, and look at the number of people who said they are willing to turn themselves in, who have opened fire on the cops once they arrived. Basically, the goal is get them to, go out a soldier for the cause, whatever that cause is, by saying, I'm fine, you don't need to come get me. I'll gladly, come arrest me, I'm fine. And then they go there, and this has happened forever. Because everybody, it especially is with people who may be former law enforcement, former Army, anybody who used to have a trust matrix that they would rely on, they're the ones that could get away with it the most. And they're the ones that end up killing several police officers and themselves and their families and all kinds of stuff. So all the more reason to be cautious in these situations, especially with people who are insurrectionists, people who don't believe in the authority of the U.S. government, or watch enough YouTube videos convincing them that there has been a takeover of the U.S. government by UN shock troops or the George Soros or commies, right? And it's just, it's one of those situations where if this guy Steve Friend says we don't need to send SWAT, all the more reason to send SWAT.
Oh, yeah.
Secondly, sending SWAT doesn't mean you're kicking their door down. It does not mean that you are assaulting them. It does not mean you're even raising guns. They are there as support. And a good portion of the time, you'll know from any of the sources I just told you, for real, or any movie you've ever watched where they actually have somebody knock on the door pretending to be somebody else so they can take someone down peacefully, or they do it, they have police officers backed up by SWAT, or FBI backed up by SWAT, those kind of things, that they have their tiers that they go through of response in dealing with folks like this. And when you get to the Jan 6ers, they're looking at these people's Facebook posts, their Twitter posts, their Getter, Parler, their Truth Social, and if these guys are posing with 19 different versions of guns and saying, come take them from my cold dead hands, yeah, you're gonna send SWAT if you have to arrest them for anything. For anything, you're going to send SWAT. Okay, so this guy's problem was these people said they would turn themselves in, and the FBI went, I don't know, I call me crazy, but since you were involved in a massive attack on the capital of the country, and you do nothing but post, I'm going to burn this place down tweets and all the time, well, how about we just send some extra, and you're part of a group of people that, that are part of an amosexual swing party club, where, y'all rub your guns with oil and roll around with them, that maybe, just maybe, we'll take some extra precautions. And this guy believed he had a legit bone to pick with his with the FBI, that they were targeting unfairly people, by the way, many of whom who are in jail for what they did and are going to go to prison for a long time because of what they did, and can't make bail, not because they couldn't afford it, because they couldn't put up property or something like that, but because the judge in their case listened to them say, yeah, I did it and I'd do it again, or they watch a video of them saying, if you get busted, just lie to them and tell them that it was a mistake and you got swept up, and they'll just give you an ankle monitor and you can go right back to planning. And then they play it in court, and then you wonder why you're denied bail. It's on and on and on. All of these cases. None of them ever denied due process. All of this is just like these. This is Jim Jordan yet again, almost by his very existence in Congress, mocking our judicial system because he should have been at the very least a material witness in a sexual assault in multiple sexual assault cases, if not a co-conspirator. That's hopefully, again. Unfortunately, in this country, one of my other bone to pick is that we tend to, when we catch and neutralize through prison or other means, people who have a history of sexual assault, it is usually past the time when they are the most concerning, after their youth, when they would
Right.
need Viagra to continue attacking people. And by the way, some of them do. But it would have been nice to catch them, before they were able to victimize half of their victim pool. I don't know, call me crazy. And God knows what's, part of the continuing march. I have been going through both the Durham report and then this new, report coming. FBI whistleblower testimony highlights government abuse, misallocation of resources, and retaliation. Okay, yeah. Highlights government abuse, which is like so vaguey, like abuse of funds, abuse of, but abuse of people's rights. No,
It means nothing without detail.
Context, exactly.
Yeah, context.
Misallocation of resources, which now that you hear their testimony means matter of opinion, which means don't use SWAT to go after people who are on Facebook all the time bragging about how many rounds they have stacked in their basement. Again, for all the Waco fans out there, they were stockpiling grenades before the FBI finally came for them. The FBI let them stockpile automatic weapons, relatively known in Texas for a while, before they actually went, well, all right, the grenades and the having sex with children thing. I think that's the part where, that's the line we can't just ignore that now, right? Same thing here. And then retaliation. The retaliation in this case seems to be, by all accounts, both from the FBI and from what these guys are saying, is that they violated their oath or they superseded their chain of command in what they believed should be the actions. Like they refused duties given to them because, in their opinion, after watching a bunch of, Glenn Beck videos and Ben Shapiro videos, that they should not, as a form of patriotism, they should violate their oath because in their minds that makes them an oath keeper, right? Or a 3%er or what have you. And one of the pushbacks that that one of these guys listed, and Jim Jordan brought it out, and I think it was indicative of the entire mythology that they're trying to portray in this situation, is that all of a sudden they were looking into some people, and an indicator that the person that they were looking at might be violent or potentially violent was the fact that they flew the Betsy Ross flag, which and the Betsy Ross flag is from a time period, by the way, that predates the Confederate flag.
Sure.
And is about the size of the colonies, and it's interestingly enough pre-Civil War. And it has been taken as a symbol, as of like the founders' ideals by these folks. We need to go back to the founders, but then even further that there shouldn't have been, the founders would have been against the Civil War because people should have the right to do business however they want, even if that means enslaving other people. Blah blah blah. And so there's a bunch of people,
slaves,
right? There's a bunch of people who take that Betsy Ross flag and use it to mean that, right? Now, remember, allegedly, the Soviet flag is about the workers of the world unite. That sounds lovely. But obviously, none of the people in the Republican Party would go, you want to take a flag that just means workers united? Are you anti-union now? When they bust, Antifa for being, carrying a Marxist flag and wanting to destroy the country, right? There's none of that. And I think that an even stronger example, because Jim Jordan literally said, you want to, the Betsy Ross flag is now a symbol of hate. You can't have the Betsy Ross flag, is the equivalent of someone saying the swastika is originally a Buddhist symbol. So anybody who flies it is not a Nazi, but a Buddhist. So you're attacking Buddhists now just because they want concentration camps? Like, look, some
just
Buddhists
because they want concentration
right.
camps.
Some Buddhists want
But it's
concentration.
a Buddhist concentration camp.
Right. Yeah. Right. Where they actually learn to concentrate. It's fascinating. That's what a Buddhist concentration camp would be. A camp you go to voluntarily, like camp. and you would just learn how to concentrate, which might be, now that I think of it, a Buddhist concentration camp, out. I would add out to it, a camp out, because a concentration camp out. A meditation retreat is what they're called, if you're trying to sneak by the censors. But it is the equivalent of him saying, that's what he means. The Betsy Ross flag, as Betsy Ross designed it, is not villainous in and of itself any more than the Buddhist swastika that was taken by, which, by the way, there is no German word swastika. That's I believe, an Indian or Tibetan word, if I'm not mistaken. They used Horskreuz or whatever, the hooked cross. That's what they called it. But people use the original name of the thing again, and that's where it gets watery in terms of people calling it what the original people called it versus what it means to the people who co-opted it. Now, you guys know I will always be mad that as a comedian I can never bring back the Charlie Chaplin mustache, and it's very upsetting because it's very silly and very funny, and you can make lots of funny faces with a Charlie Chaplin mustache.
You really
right?
can.
It's really silly. It's a very silly thing. But thanks to somebody I'm not going to mention, who ruined it
Don't
for
bring him up,
comedians.
because then you lose the argument.
That's right. Yeah, it's a word you can't say, like nuclear, I guess. Oh, darn it. So, this kind of playing dumb about the co-opted symbols that were at one point innocent or indicative of another religious society. Look no further than all the Norse mythology that has been co-opted by Nazis or authoritarians. That is not the fault of anybody who believes in or has a family history of being raised in the Norse religion or any of that stuff. Famously the CPAC stage that was that Odin shape that they picked, that was oddly something that Nazis wore on the specific Nazis, not like air quotes Nazis, but genuine Nazis wore as part of their unit, identification.
You said unit.
I did. We got to take a break. I've said unit too many times. We'll be back right after this unit. It's the HAL Sparks Radio program, Mega World Unit. I just have to say, I like that. That's one of the things that bothers me about when people take, it's on a softer sense, it's like when Christian, right people wear the cross and absolutely are arguing for what would be Old Testament type behaviors, anti-gay violence, anti-woman violence, all the stuff that is okayed in Leviticus, for example, that Jesus specifically went, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. But these people call themselves Christians, not followers of Yahweh or the Abrahamic God. I mean, they're almost like they should call themselves Abrahamians or something.
Back in
like
20
that.
seconds.
Abrahamians. Thanks. But they wear the cross, which is indicative of the guy who was killed for being a nice guy. Right?
Wait. I know this one.
No. What?
I'm kidding.
Oh. I thought you were going to play a fart sound.
Attention. Stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
It's true. And I'm going to have to do some shuffling of the video in a moment to make sure we've got room to get Philip Ittner on with us at the top of the next hour.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's going to it'll be be a little sausage making on camera. Hello.
You.
But again, there's a lot going on. Again, Zelensky is meeting with G7 leaders in Japan right now. And the Wagner Group has claimed they have won Bakhmut, which everybody else, because they are showing their flag in front of a bunch of rubble. And not shockingly, there's a lot of rubble in Bakhmut. That's not a hard photo shoot to come up with. By the way, there's a lot of footage or places you can film or photograph yourself in front of rubble all throughout the Donbass, thanks to Russia's nonstop flattening of buildings.
Aw, that's so nice of them.
Isn't
Every
it?
time I hear rubble, I think of the Hamburglar.
And I think of Barney. It's I guess there's two different takes on it. But I would, obviously this, one of the, to kind of put a pin in this whole weaponization of the DOJ, weaponization of the FBI thing. This is all clearly them running interference for Donald Trump and his increasing criminal comeuppance. That is, he's finally seeing the inside of a courtroom about stuff he has done for decades. And because he does it across state lines, it requires the FBI. It'd be one thing if it was just singular to New York, for example, and it was about his New York taxes. You could argue that it was just the DA and New York's police department, because they would have to go after him for some of that. However, because it's across state lines, it gives them an opportunity to attack the federal government, which is one of their favorite things to do. Which, again, the generalized anti-government trend that people have just, of the government that we elect again and again and again. And there was a great element that, where, people cite Carlin about, how, governments are dangerous and can't be trusted and corporations are doing all this stuff to you. But his ultimate conclusion, if you listen to kind of the end of that entire thesis that was done over several albums, was he goes, you notice I don't make fun of politicians a lot. And that's because they're elected. We put them in there. The people do. And he goes, that's right. Maybe, just maybe, the people suck. That was his final conclusion in that regard. Now, I love George Carlin. He was not always right. So deifying his political opinions and his attitudes about certain things, especially with the amount of substances and the type of substances he would consume on the regular, and how the effect it has on your brain, gave him some very Elon Musk-esque kind of ideas about how the world works. And I'm here to tell you, a lot of it is hooey. It is, many of the conspiracies that we have been, it seems, and increasingly, this is the weird part, if you want to get conspiratorial, that a lot of the conspiracy talk that we hear is being touted and sold to us by people who themselves are engaged in small, petty conspiracies. That if I can throw a lot of dust up about the world is full of corrupt monsters, maybe you won't notice my very measurable awfulness. The things you can track, regular bribery, regular, people who are engaged with the child sex traffickers of the world. We pulled up this story, interestingly enough, that talks about this guy, George Nader. George Nader was he didn't work. He wasn't paid by the Trump campaign. He was an informal advisor. So he just benefited from the deal size. He's one of these people like Paul Manafort. I'll work for free because of the things that, I can benefit from. And he had a meeting at Trump Tower with Trump and Jared Kushner and I think one of MBS's lieutenants, one of the other princes, back in 2016. He was brought back on in the lead up to 2020. And then he was busted for child pornography because during the Mueller investigation, he was playing footsie with so many Russians that he got they got a warrant, one of these FISA warrants that the Republicans decry so much. And they got a hold of his phone, and on there was a tremendous amount of child pornography. And it turns out that they also busted him for kidnapping and sexually assaulting an 11-year-old boy from the Czech Republic, that he flew him and his mother to the United States, took their passports, and kept them prisoner in his home while he daily assaulted this child. And and by the way, he had been arrested and charged in the Czech Republic for doing this stuff in the 90s. And everyone in the Trump circle that brought him in on this stuff knew this about this man. We're not talking about, I'm sure this is happening in adrenochrome, blah, 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 that I'm sure that everybody who watches Hillary Clinton age like a normal person, but is somehow convinced she's taking adrenochrome so that she can bring her youth back.
I think her problem is that she took the drinking blood from babies route, and that's proving to not be as useful an anti-aging benefit.
I know that's the purest form. You have to scare them, and then that's how they make adrenochrome. Now,
Maybe
I know
they're not frightened enough when she eats them.
I know what you're thinking. You can make adrenochrome in a laboratory by just oxidizing, I think, adrenaline and hemoglobin or whatever the mix is, that you can get, and you can recreate even those things. You can create adrenaline in a lab as well, so you never need a human being for it, or even an animal to make it. I know you're thinking that, but where's the fun in that? So, anyways, this guy, this George Nader fellow, who I should be one of the people that we bring up like GYM Jordan every time the folks talk about some sort of conspiracy of conspiracies. This is a guy who Trump was trying to get in business with all the way up to his campaign, and then ultimately was able to lure this guy, get this guy's money involved in his money by running for president. And again, was Trump really intending to win the first time he won? Probably not. Until his ego wouldn't let him, drop out, because he always has to win until he loses fair and square, and then he has to pretend he won. But this guy George Nader, was somebody in Republican circles for a very long time. He goes back to members of the Reagan administration running interference for this guy's crimes. And to me, it's just like this is a prime example of a horrifying human being who's engaged in very real crimes against children. Not this big, amorphous, Bohemian Grove, Illuminati version of things. This is an actual guy. You can actually see what he was doing, that he personally engaged in, like his own, like that guy I think it was in Cleveland, who kept 2 women in his basement, or 3 women in his basement forever, like his own daughters or whatever. That kind of level of stuff, which is trackable. And by the way, that guy kept those women in fear of escaping by telling them that he was part of a big network of people who, if they tried, that there would be police officers and government officials and other folks that would kill their family if they tried to escape. That was not true. When they escaped, you know what happened? They became witnesses against him, and he went to jail. And they received victim services and counseling, and the police officers that helped them and the prosecutors that went after this guy worked day and night to make sure that he got every single second in jail he could possibly get. Same thing with this guy. It's not a grand conspiracy, except for these, on a minor level, the Trumps of the world going, I know he's a child sex trafficker who kidnapped an 11-year-old boy and assaulted him for years. But he's got good connections with the Saudis, and we're going to need them, if we want to stiff-arm Qatar, which is why they brought him in. Because Qatar is a U.S. ally. We have a base there. And there was some level of that the Abraham Accords would be a workaround for the UAE to start undermining America's allies in the Middle East. That eventually, and I would argue that some of that might even be to slice Israel up from the inside, using people like Netanyahu to kind of raise the bifurcation in the country, get them infighting, and then have the country collapse on behalf of the Saudi interests in the area. Long, a 10-year plan that Trump has no awareness of, but knows he can benefit in the short term. And when you have people like George Nader, or Jeffrey Epstein for that matter, who died in jail after he was arrested, but who was president running the DOJ and put his own people in the FBI at the top and all that stuff, and what city that he still lived in at the time, had his main residence in at the time. Where was that? Okay. I think the big conspiratorial talk is to hide the small conspiracies. Whether it's Alex Jones and the money he makes hand over fist and how he hides it and shuffles it from it and makes it disappear so his wife couldn't get it when she divorced him or what have you. The big conspiracies are to hide the small ones, which are real and measurable, and we can do something about. We'll be back right after this. Philip Bittner will be joining us from Ukraine. It's the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Okay, now I have to studio mode. Yep, and then I have to.
Some people are saying there's been a slapback since Phil joined.
There might be. I'll have to source him through here, because it's one of those weird things. Is he
like me?
Well, I'll just go away.
Well, that is true. So I gotta add a browser source. Where is it? There we go. Add that, and then we go to PI. We'll add him. There we go. And let's see, I'm going to turn this name on and squeeze it and move it over here. Yep. And you're going to, whoops. I hate, you ever have a mouse not want to let go? You know what I'm talking about. I know you know what I'm talking about. We'll move you over a little bit.
Usually right after they bite the tip of my thumb.
Oh, thank God you said thumb. Okay, and then I'm fixing this.
Let go.
Stop it. All right, and then I'll bring in Philip. And
Release.
Children. I work with children.
Leave it. God. You just immediately went to the dog in The Mask with that one, did you?
Oh gosh, man, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
When the dog gets the mask on.
Yeah. But also when he just takes the frisbee in the beginning, which is where you learn that he I don't know why I did this.
I'm gonna have to do a rewatch apparently.
Yeah, because that's how you know he'll go fetch it, is because he plays frisbee with him.
Ah, okay.
Yep. All right, there's Phil. There he is. Okay.
That was my first dose of Cameron Diaz.
Oh, it was everybody's first dose of Cameron Diaz, and it was plenty.
It was a heck of a dose.
Oh boy, was it?
A dosey-do.
Oh man.
Boy,
Thank you, Lisa Phillips.
Yes,
for the
sir.
super chat.
Let's see, and then I put you behind video guest. It should go right here. And it's a little crowded. The field is a little crowded, but it'll be okay. And you guys try to share some space. Okay, now you're on, Phil, and hi.
All right. I've got my elbows in my inside my armrests.
Okay, and we hear you well.
I can hear everybody else. That's good.
All right.
I don't know if I can hear Chicago.
Well, in theory, if you can hear Johnny Wilby, but that's the least of our worries. That's fine.
Least of our worries.
Yes, as long as we got you on here, now I can kind of clean up these names underneath you because they're.
You're somewhere in Texas, are you?
I am in Tejas. It is true. I had one of the biggest steaks I've ever had in my life yesterday. Like, I was like, I need a nap. Because it was the only thing.
I'm looking forward to having a good American steak when this is all over.
Yeah,
they don't do beef. They don't do beef very well here. They do.
No, but you like Americans like in the cannibal way.
Yes, that's what he's shooting for.
A good American steak because these
As
Ukrainian
a Northern
steaks.
Californian who grew up on the stories of the Donner Party. Absolutely. I am that legacy.
Delish.
I have to say, I
was built on cannibalism and I live by it.
Yeah, right. It's like telling old man stories. Like where poor people are like, we ate dried potatoes and sand, and you're like, we ate your aunt. Anyways, I ate my
Sorry,
own
I bailed out on you last minute on Wednesday.
That's all right.
Sorry, I bailed out on you last minute on Wednesday, but I got invited to a very interesting dinner. Very last minute.
Was it people? Did you eat people?
Oh,
was
no,
it
Basically
Soylent Green?
Soylent Green.
It was people. We're back.
No, so by the way,
Verinicky.
that's not that's
We
not
just
true.
talked
by the
over
way.
Chicago. We're coming back.
Okay, yeah, and by the way, that's not true. Soylent Green is not people. Soylent Green is avocado. Soylent Beige is people.
Oh.
When they mix everybody together, it's kind of a light golden brown.
Nom nom.
Well, they did in the story in the Harlan Ellison story. They did have different Soylents.
You're listening to the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome back, and welcome to Philip Bittner, who's joining us from Ukraine, who could not, by the way, join me on Wednesday because he was invited to a super secret journalist meeting of super secret journalists who are discussing things that they're super secret, and we'll save that for after the war when we can tell the stories in retrospect.
Nothing was secret.
I know
Conspiracy theories.
That's right. Yeah, we were talking about that before because I so much of life.
You were just talking about conspiracy.
That
was not a small conspiracy.
No, it was not. It was not even a big one. It was not even the myth of a big one. Is that a lot of there's a lot of value in spreading that kind of fear to people and making because you tend to I think people feel like once the conspiracy is so big, the reins are out of their hand and they give up on trying to work at it. It gets to that smoke 'em if you got 'em zone. And
why do you think the Russians traffic in it? Why do you think the Russians traffic in it so much?
There you go. That's what I was talking about. So allegedly, by the way, Zelensky's at the G7 right now, and right at that time, interestingly enough, apropos of nothing, the Wagner Group says they have claimed all of Bakhmut, the entirety of it, because they held up a flag in front of some rubble. And, obviously the Ukrainian defenses are denying it. But there's also video of last night, the night before, as Zelensky is flying there, that they rained white phosphorus all over Bakhmut almost nonstop to either drive everybody out or drive everybody indoors. Anyways, catch us up on what you know and start us off.
Not first. Not either.
Sorry, say again?
Not the first time they've used white phosphorus. So it's not the first time they've used white phosphorus there.
No, not at all.
Did I lose you?
They did it No, we lost you for a second, but you're all right.
Are we the upper limits of our bandwidth?
Probably, but that's okay. But the important thing is that they have used it before, but they did it all last night. We hear you. You're good.
Where is it? Just you and me, Johnny?
No. You probably can't hear Hal, but yeah, we hear you. You're fine.
Yep.
I can't hear Hal. Sorry.
Okay.
So okay. Then I'm just going to prattle on, as you know I can do. Okay. Wagner and those guys are going to claim victory over Bakhmut, but they're not going to talk about the fact that the Ukrainians are actually gaining ground on the wings of a pincer or a potential pincer movement around Bakhmut. So now Wagner's crowing about the potential of taking maybe 300 yards, 400 yards, which was kind of this sliver which was left at the western border of Bakhmut, the city itself. But all the while that's been going on, the Ukrainians are gaining ground around it in what could be a potential pincer movement. And then there's, of course, the talk of the entire counteroffensive, which it's been a busy week since we last spoke. Lots of things have happened, but one of the things that has happened is that I was spending some time with some people who have been talking with Ukrainian officials. The messaging, and I've been also talking to the press corps, and it's just been a busy week for one reason or another. There's a lot of talk about stopping thinking about this being a piercing, you children, a piercing thrust of Ukrainian forces, they would the lines and get behind the Russian lines and then kind of spread out and try to encircle and things like that. Instead, the starting to hear from the Ukrainians is stop thinking about it as a counteroffensive, but a series of operations that could be better considered as a campaign, as a summer campaign that they're going to try and hit in a number of different areas, a number of different entire lengths of line, because the Russians are really deeply embedded. They're dug in. So the kind of messaging we're starting to hear is that we're going to try and push on large swaths of that line, which again kind of is counterintuitive to a some sort of like major lightning fast maneuver thing where they're encircling troops and they're piercing lines and then breaking out in the rear.
It's a pincer move. The idea is
that's kind of what we've been hearing here.
Can't hear you,
Johnny. I'm still not with HAL. I'm still not with HAL.
We'll fix that. We'll fix that part in a moment. I don't know quite
Just
why that is.
give me a wave when we're going to commercial.
HAL is trying to talk right now, Phil.
I'll do like this when I'm talking.
Okay.
But
sure.
The issue.
Talk about the F-16s. We can talk about the F-16.
Can you hear me, Phil?
I can hear you, Johnny.
Okay, HAL is trying to talk right now.
Yeah, give me 1 second, and he'll relay it because that's just how the internet is. So, for the viewers out there and the listeners out there, it is there's a reason why it's called a pincer move. The sharp points of it, they gather around and they encircle a group and cut them off from supplies and backup.
Last week when I couldn't.
I'm still talking.
HAL is actually explaining something. This isn't a test, Phil. HAL is actually talking to the audience.
Yeah. I'm trying to relating something to them. So those sharp incursions are very dangerous because the primary troops that do the encircling are the smallest and the heaviest fighters. They don't encircle them with tanks. They push in with soldiers. It is rife with danger. It is, but it is very bold. But in this particular case, it is working. There are a couple of things, and we will work this out in 1 second. Let me see if I can maybe if I change it. Probably there's no reason why it would work this way, but we'll see. I'm going to try and rearrange my audio or reload the page for me on this end at some point. And when we come back, I'm going to discuss a couple of things, and Johnny will relay it to him if I can't, which is there are, in line with our talk about Jim Jordan, there have been reports of Russians sexually assaulting 50 men in the claimed territories as soon as they rolled in, and those people have finally have escaped and are now giving evidence as part of that. There is talk of an execution of 400 people in the Luhansk region by the Russians. They were bragging about it again. Again, there's a difference between accidentally engaging in these things or doing something, or a rogue group doing something, and the uppers deciding this will be the strategy. There is a material difference country to country on that, which you have to meet. And then Rishi Sunak met with, from the UK. When he met Zelensky, he said, quote, "You did it," meaning that they think it's going to work. They believe the end is near in terms of the battle. Let's take an early break, and I will fix the audio as best I can, or try, and see if we can remedy it. We'll be back right after this. Yeah.
Phil, we're taking a break.
Wish me luck. I'm going to reload the page.
Okay.
Okay, I'm enabling my microphone, and check. And yeah, and let me know if you can hear me, Phil. I can't. It's so funny. Yeah, hold on. Try it again. Say something there, Phil. He's laughing as he makes a noise. Oh, I know. Wait 1 second. Hold on. I see audio here. Oh, there you go. Now I hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, there he is. We can hear each other. Yay.
Yay.
Okay, fixed it. That was again. It's just
what happened there.
it's gremlins. Like there's at a certain
Shit
point.
happens.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
just gremlins.
pardon, we're not on air, are we?
No, we're not on air right now. Yep, we're okay.
We're in a break. Good.
Fixed it. Gremlins.
Yeah.
So what I was saying during my little piece there was there are reports of some fairly horrible stuff coming out of the 400 people executed in Luhansk.
With the white phosphorus? Oh, no,
No.
that.
Yeah.
Oh.
This is an interception, one of the audio interceptions this guy, that the Ukrainians get. And again, I take those with a grain of salt, but if they've been sourced out, there's a lot of There's a lot of human people out there verifying the wheres and the what fors, by unit numbers and all that stuff.
I haven't heard much about it, I have to admit.
Right.
My volume probably just changed, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have no Chicago if I'm supposed to be hearing. All right.
And we're back. And I can hear Phil and he can hear me. And we'll have for however long that lasts, which is hilarious. In the meantime, though,
Gotta love modern technology.
Yes, it is. It's the fact that it's even possible. I'm always amazed and shocked that the audio when we're talking together doesn't sound like X-wing fighters trying to talk right before they go into the Death Star.
Well,
wait for my signal to start your run.
Yeah. It's the old Louis C.K. bit about having now I can't use my cell phone. It has to go to space.
Right, yeah.
This technology that you didn't even know existed 30 minutes ago.
Right, yeah. Yeah, Wi-Fi. Yeah, the Wi-Fi on airplanes, right.
It is amazing we can communicate. It would have cost millions of dollars for a broadcast corporation to do this just 15 years ago.
Exactly, it's amazing.
So
So
satellites and all the rest of it, so.
What I was talking about when we were so rudely interrupted by space gremlins was the You got me? Can you? What happened?
We can't win.
That's very weird. How about check? You hear me?
Oh,
Yep,
you're back.
I thought so.
You're back.
That's good.
You're back.
All right.
Right,
That in that process, and of course, something decided just to throw a monkey wrench because it's just being rude. But there was we hear a lot of these stories about folks who are and again we have to take it with a grain of salt. But there's enough of this over time that you recognize that there are Russians who are horrified at what they're doing. There are Russians that are proud of what they're doing. And that mix is immaterial to what's actually happening on the ground because Russians themselves don't have the right or the ability or the means or the wherewithal to push back on any of this stuff, unlike we do over here. So our tankies can yell all they want. Theirs get thrown in jail, as it were, their version therein. But anyways, these stories are going to continue to come out, and that is going to be the follow-up horror story that we're going to get across Bakhmut and these areas once they are liberated. And I don't want to there's so much of it. I don't want to get bogged down into who's and the who's of whether it's possible or not. But I do want.
Well, no, we've been talking about this. We've been talking about this the entire war, though. Hal.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Russia has a very different opinion about how to conduct warfare, and they're basically they think we're hypocrites. They think that their point is that to deny that war is brutal and just filled with death and destruction and throwing meat into the grinder. That we're being Pollyannic and that we're not, that we're hypocrites.
Right.
they themselves will brag about this kind of behavior in certain circumstances. Um, you know, so things, stories like Bucha, story like Izium, stories like that we're going to hear out of so many different cities as liberation comes. They conduct warfare in a very different way, and we can just expect this. And of course, it fuels fire for the Ukrainians, because any thinking human being gets, anybody with any kind of compassion is disgusted by it. But we're going to hear more of it.
Yeah. So this, it seems to be a constant kind of ratchet up. And obviously the spring offensive is not in full force yet, or Zelensky would not be out of the country. And it may have been one of the things that they were waiting for to launch it was not just the May 9th date, but the fact that he's going to be at the G7. His reception at the G7 is a hero's welcome across the board, which has got to be very, aggravating for Russia, because Trump, if you'll know, was trying on his way out to get Russia back into the G8.
Make it the G8 again.
Yeah. And it makes sense that, if you're looking forward to, if Russia's, pressuring him to do that, because they know full well that eventually Ukraine might be a member of the G7, because it'll certainly have a bigger economy than, possibly Germany's, if it stabilized at that point. So this was another version of the end run. And once they got kicked out of it, it was hard for them to use, like they used the UN, to muscle through monetary means the G7, the other countries in the G8.
Well, sure. I mean, it's got to be. It's one of those things that I'm sure Vladimir Putin is going to take personally, because he's a petty little man. And he probably will take it personally, because that's one of the great embarrassments was getting kicked out of the G8. He always has been desperate to bring Russia back into parity with all of the great powers of the globe, and he just isn't able to do it. And this war only exemplifies it even more.
Right.
But I wanted to. It's a pity that we had audio problems at the beginning of the show, because I'll do another quick little run at this, because it's important. But give me everybody wave at me if we have an audio problem and we need to go to break. Do we need to go to break?
Nope, we're good. Go ahead.
Okay. I have been hearing for the past few days messaging coming out of Kiev that we need to stop thinking about this as some sort of like blitzkrieg, kind of break through the lines and then circle around and do some sort of massive one-all assault that will start thinking it more along the lines of a campaign. So that you're striking all along the stretch of the front line. You're not there's no massive operation. There's punch here, punch there, find a weakness here, find a weakness there. But start thinking it more of a summer campaign and not a counter-offensive, because we kind of think about, when we talk about this counter-offensive, this idea that it would be like operations and maneuver and like this massive kind of assault kind of situation. And what I'm starting to hear from people, from sources that I have, and then also other people who are talking to people, and we're all expecting this operation this summer, is to stop thinking, an offensive, a strike, an assault, and start thinking more like a campaign. So it may be a very different kind of military operation than what we thought was going to happen, but it's still going to put an awful lot of pressure on the Russians, and we'll see what happens. But you're also right, Hal, in that you don't ratchet it up to 11 when your president is out of the country. So I think we're still not at the height of intensity of operations that we're potentially going to see this summer.
Gotcha. And this is going to be a tug and pull, and then I feel like a lot of this is going to be like these lightning attacks that we've been talking about, how they took Kharkiv and Kherson back. And there are reports that and this has been ongoing for a little while, that occupants in Crimea are packing their things. That there was a conversation maybe a couple of weeks ago about how they should basically beat feet because it's coming. They were getting nervous about maybe the bridge gets blown up fully and they can't escape. So people were chit-chatting about it. Now the let's see, from the Freedom TV channel, they were talking about how the Ukrainian Defense Forces are working to liberate territories in the south as well as in other areas. And in Crimea, the Russian occupiers continue to pack things. They continue to be aware of the anxiety of their condition, the situation in principle, and they are studying the movement map, the roadmap of possible options for moving beyond the curb, since you also need to be able to get out of Crimea. And then obviously the taking of Bakhmut, allegedly taking of Bakhmut. Gherkin, the guy we talk about occasionally, who's just, he's right up there with the most awful in Russia. He's angry because he's like, great, we won rubble and we only lost, tens of thousands of people for what would be a suburb of Toledo as far as its strategic importance.
And also, interestingly, how the Wagner guys can say that they claim the city.
Yeah.
But what they're ignoring is that there are creeping pincer moves, and there's actually the Ukrainians are making advances on the area around them.
Bakhmut. Yeah.
So Wagner can but that's where they're making their advances. So now Wagner can potentially, we'll have to wait and see because we've heard this so many times before, but Wagner can make the announcement, we've taken Bakhmut, and all the while the Ukrainians are, you took Bakhmut, we're taking everything around Bakhmut, which means you're going to be in a little pocket.
Yeah, we baited you into the center of a city that we no longer want to defend, and you took the bait and you moved into it, and now we're moving around you. Absolutely. And that's not the first time that's happened in war in the history of the world. Again, these are World War I level tactics in some ways.
This is Alexander the Great kind of Shaka Zulu kind of idea.
Totally.
But one last quick thing about this also, in addition to that, is that I talk about we're getting messaging from the Ukrainians that stop thinking about it as an offensive, but more as a campaign.
Mm-hmm.
There's also communication going on and people talking amongst one another, and it is what it is. But there's some discussion of the idea that what you do is you take Bakhmut, which is a symbolic, hard fought over months and months and months. You circle it. And you just beat the Wagner guys. You just crush them like bugs, because then that sends the message all along the line.
Yeah.
And again, thinking that this is a campaign where you're broadly striking along the line, is that you send the message of that's what we can do to Bakhmut, and that's what we can do to you. Anywhere along the line, you're never going to.
Don't stick your neck out.
And it would be terrifying because it's going if they use the assets they've been given and the tactics that are best used, this combined arms thing that we've talked about in the past, it will slice through the Russians like butter, like a hot knife through butter. Well, and it will be terrifying for everybody along the line, because the whispers will get out. Everybody will say, oh my goodness, this is how brutal this is when these NATO assets and these NATO tactics are brought against Russian assets.
I also thought
majorly destabilizing thing all along the line.
Yeah, we had to take a break in a couple of minutes, but what struck me is the context by which the Wagner guys have been talking about, and specifically Prigozhin, about the situation the Wagner guys find themselves in, lacking ammunition, lacking support, and what they ultimately said in that statement about they've claimed Bakhmut is that we've got it, now the Russian military has to come and take it over. Like, they're bugging out. Basically, it sounds like twofold. One is, we're leaving Bakhmut. We did what we were supposed to do. You're supposed to hold it. So, see ya. And the other one is like almost coaxing them in to a death trap, saying, you're not gonna give us the ammunition we need. You can stand here in our place. Or like, yeah, it's safe. Come on in, and then let them get slaughtered because you want some revenge against the Russian, the official troops. Because if apropos of nothing, the idea that they took it in one night just because Zelensky's out of town is a little silly considering how long this has been going on. But the idea that they said that they've been talking about getting out, leaving entirely, focusing on Africa, handing out their campaign contracts for multiple, 13 months there, 6 months in. It sounds like like he's punking them more than anything else.
This is just another reason why it is very problematic to use mercenaries.
Yeah.
When you're trying to achieve a geopolitical military victory.
Right.
It's also just so indicative of how also bad it is to have these guys when you've also got your own armed forces and to have them pitted against one another. It's bad stuff.
Yep, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. After the break, we'll be taking your questions from the chat room via Johnny Million. Get them in there at infotainmentwars.com or at twitch.tv/HalSparks. You can also go to fwank.com, FWANQ.com. We'll be back. I think, okay, hold on one second. Let me, I will remedy that. I think I did, but we'll see. Check for me. Check. Okay, hold on. Nope, I don't see you there. Give me 1 second. You would be in this one, you would be video get. Oh, hold on. This would be video. Open this up.
Killed the radio star.
Mm-hmm. Control stream the audio. There you go. Close. There you go. And then speak to me, Johnny. Say something.
Check.
There you go.
Check.
Yeah, you're going out now.
Yay.
You should be good. And then, yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I got some questions.
Excellent. That happened when I had to move the shuffle around.
Yeah.
Shuffle.
Yeah, and then we'll move here. Okay, there we go. A little better framing. A little better. Let's see. Was there a drive-by?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep going back to the idea that like the tankies who all support, can't stop themselves from supporting Russia and whatnot. Well, we'll get to your questions first. We'll do questions first.
Mm-hmm. I think I can vaguely hear Chicago.
Welcome back. We've got Philip Ittner and Johnny Million. Johnny Million's been farming some questions from the chat room for us, for Phil, to get us all caught up on that. This was a big week too, Phil. We talked about this a little bit earlier in the week, though, that the Russians crossed the 200,000 dead soldiers line, and it grew by 2,670 since we almost spoke on Wednesday. Those are horrifying, shocking numbers, and I don't know how they can shrug it off. But let's get to the questions from the chat.
Yeah, so first question came in a while ago from Ed's 3D Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Can you ask Philip if New York, Ukraine is free yet? I didn't know there was a New York, Ukraine.
New York,
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine. I'm not familiar with.
It's
New
hard when
Ukraine.
these questions have a follow-up.
Did he literally? Okay.
Capital N, lowercase EW, space, capital Y. He did that. He went the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
New York. No, I've
All right,
never
so
heard
we'll see
of
if he
New
clarifies in the chat. I will move on to Nick's question.
It's pronounced New York, and it's in the Toretsk urban of the Bakhmut region of the Donetsk Oblast. So it would be on the other side of Bakhmut. It would be on the
southern,
the invaded side,
southeastern side of Bakhmut. Probably not. Probably hasn't been liberated by Ukrainian forces yet.
Not yet. Nope.
It
has not, insofar as I can find.
Like near Limon and the south near this place, New York, which is, I mean, it can't be a big place. It's a funky name, but I think I would have heard of that before. Just because it is a funky name.
Yes, Novorossiysk is also one of the other names for it in that area. So.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Well, that sounds more like look. It's strategically not very important. Otherwise, I think I probably would have heard of it before. But
it apparently is like a little urban settlement. It's like a little. It's a little. It's a mini town, ironically named New York in that regard, I suppose. But it's pretty
with an intricate subway network.
Right.
Big enough to have a subway.
I was kidding, Phil.
Yeah.
Oh, you were talking about our New York. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Right. Yes. Exactly. Okay. Let's grab another one.
Okay.
And loads of
Got
rats.
A question from Nick Rich.
We could riff on that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nick Rich says, "We know the human cost. What capital does Ukraine need to rebuild what's been destroyed?"
Trillions.
Yeah.
There was a study done. By an EU organization and this was a good 5 months ago, if not 6, and they were already into the trillions. Take Mariupol alone. You're going to have to reconstruct an entire city that was destroyed. It's
right.
They're going to be paying. The Russians are going to be paying reparations for a long time, and a lot of their assets could be.
The EU has offered just recently. The EU has offered or is working on what would be an economic package for Ukraine for the rebuilding of it. That would be interest free essentially. And what would happen is, since Russia couldn't afford to pay for all the reconstruction, what they can do is pay everything they can, but also the interest on any loans that countries do. So Russia would be on the hook for, at the very least, the loan costs of the loaned money, so that the taxpayers in all these different countries aren't paying to have to rebuild, Ukraine on behalf of Russia. We just loan them the money, and we make interest on it. The interest is paid, once it's paid back, is paid by Russia. And that also is
already
close to a Marshall Plan idea.
Billions have already, and also in addition to that, billions have already been seized from oligarchs and people on the Magnitsky list, for example, things like that. So, they're going to need a lot more. They're going to need this program you're mentioning their HAL and other systems like it. Because I've been out to the Donbass and it's devastated. It's you drive for miles and miles and miles, and all you see is destroyed buildings.
Right.
It's insane. And then the entire infrastructure and the trade and all the rest of it. The Russians have a lot to answer for here. So.
Right. Let's grab another one, Johnny Million.
Okay, we've got another one from Connie Kelly. If the Cheyenne will the Cheyenne envoys visit to Kiev produce anything useful?
I doubt it. It's a nice gesture, but certainly far less than what Zelensky has been doing in the last week and a half. The man has been. On the diplomatic front, it's lovely to see the Cheyenne here, but on the diplomatic front, I think Zelensky's trip to France, Germany, the UK, Saudi, which was a bit of a surprise for him to go to Saudi Arabia, that will hopefully pay off in dividends, whether it's economic or military. Some of his other trips on his way to Hiroshima, he's been really pushing it hard, and Zelensky being Zelensky, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if he's getting real results.
But by the way, there's a new thirst squad going on in terms of Northern European leaders with Kaja Kallas, the Estonian prime minister. She's right up there with the former prime minister of I guess Norway and of New Zealand.
I think Finland wasn't. New Zealand.
Yes. Yeah. And anyways, Russia is calling her Europe's new Iron Lady, which they mean as an insult, but she takes as a compliment because she's had it up to here with Russia, and as you know, as the Prime Minister of Estonia, she knows that they're much more of a target if Russia decides to cross those lines than say even Finland or Norway. Estonia feels like one of those areas that they feel like they can take. And she's like, no, not ever. And they've been pushing back for a long time against, what Russia did in the eastern territories of Ukraine to start with. And she's like, yeah, we're not having it. This ends with them leaving. Because if they get the idea they can try this and salami slice their way through it, we're next.
Well, there are those who think that I don't believe this, but there are those who think that if Russia wanted to expand this and up the ante, even though they have the losing hand, if they wanted to bluff and up the ante and make things like even worse and worse, that they would try and test Article 5 of the NATO Charter, which is an attack on one is an attack on all.
Right.
So would they do it in Poland or would they do it in one of the Baltic states? And Estonia would be primed for that. And so, statements like that, where it's like, you come and try and you'll find out, sort of thing.
I have to admit, I discovered in my studies this week something that shocked me, and very few things do. In that, I've talked about many times before the 97 agreement, the NATO Russian founding agreement, where Russia said, yeah, anybody who wants to join NATO can join NATO. If they don't want to join NATO, they don't have to. It's up to them. Countries, sovereign territories, we agree on that everybody after the 91 numbers are sovereign territories, and you can join whatever you want. And that was in writing, and people ignore that all the time. But apparently, that whole talk about not 1 inch further that you hear all the time from the tankies and others about that, if we let Germany reunify, you guys have to promise not to incorporate anybody into NATO. And this was, again, supposedly an agreement with the USSR, a country that no longer exists, but we'll put that aside for a second, that Gorbachev actually said at a meeting with Bush and James Baker that if countries want to join NATO, they have every right. If after the reunification, they would have the right to do that. Gorbachev offered this up, so much so that the people around him were leaning forward, going, "Wait a minute, what did you just say? Did you just say that to them?" Because they started leaning in and whispering, and Gorbachev apparently waved them off. And once the translation came through, Bush was sitting there, and even his own people, the American delegation, were like, "Really? You're copping to that?" And somebody slipped him a note that said, in writing, "Get him to say that again." And he said, so we're in agreement then that if a country after the reunification wants to join NATO, they can, but if they don't want to, they don't have to. And Gorbachev said precisely that. So that predates even any of their Yeltsin argument, or that somebody threw them a bone that NATO expansion is the reasoning behind this. Never mind the fact that Finland joining would be a bigger border with them than Ukraine ever was. So it's always been nonsense. But I found that fascinating that Gorbachev had even agreed that former Soviet satellite countries and other European countries could join NATO if they wanted to. And this is before the fall of the USSR.
Yeah. I mean, he certainly was probably more thinking about Warsaw Pact than he was thinking about republics within the Soviet Union.
Well, they hadn't fallen apart yet. That was the thing. It
hadn't fallen apart yet. That's right. And also the you have to also consider that this is so deep within their DNA that Ukraine is just part of Russia. That's just the European part of Russia. They're just another tribe of Russians that, it's so deep into their idea and their sense of self and structure that's why you see this uproar within Russia about like, how dare they try to become Europeans and leave us? They can't grok it, as the saying goes, So when
I
he was
just
saying
found that
I'm sure he was thinking more like, absolutely, but I'm sure he was thinking more like Poland.
He
was probably thinking Poland. He was talking Czech.
But that was but that's what people use even beyond the former Soviet satellites as far as expansion. That the addition of Poland or other countries like that was verboten at one point. Also, I would like to remind everyone that those maps that show the expansion of NATO that people always complain about, they like show, look at what we did, like it happened in 10 seconds instead of over the course of decades, don't also show Russia's attack on Georgia, on Chechnya, and on Ukraine in that process, which was one of the reasons why you saw a ratcheting up of people joining NATO. It was the exact opposite. The idea that Russia attacked these countries because NATO expansion was making them nervous is the exact opposite of reality. People were joining NATO because Russia was deciding to salami slice its way through these nearby countries that had sovereignty. It was ignoring its own sovereign engagement with these countries, and all the while playing as like in the sandbox of the UN Security Council and using mutual assured destruction as a way of stiff-arming everyone.
I've said it 100 times before, and I'll say it again. NATO did not expand east. The east came running into NATO zone for unified protection because they knew what a bully Russia is.
Exactly, and that's where the Estonian leader is like, enough of this nonsense. Like, this is anybody who needs to join, wants to join NATO should be able to join it, because we have messing around with this and tiptoeing has not stopped Russia from seizing 3 countries. In whole or in part, and they have, by their own rhetoric, from the leadership to their media, which is inexorably linked, they have said our goal is. I mean, when you've got people clamoring that they could nuke Berlin and reclaim, tribal lands from their Germanic hordes, that's on a totally different scale than we're nervous that somebody might take a swing. It's embarrassing.
And there are still people in Eastern Europe who remember what it was like to live under the thumb, because ultimately being in the Warsaw Pact was living under the thumb of Moscow. And there are enough people in all of those former Warsaw Pact countries that remember, and who are now NATO countries, who remember what it was like to live under Moscow. And there's no intention of going back, because it's really, it's a different style of relationship to power. You don't want to live under Moscow's thumb.
No, we have to take a break, but I would like to say, just for the record, to kind of also put a final pin in that, is that the Volodin, who's in the Duma, the chairman of the Duma, or whatever his role is, the chairman of the State Duma in Russia, issued a statement that Ukraine has been seized by NATO and the United States as territory, and that it is not trying to be free. This is us, the U.S. invaded Ukraine. That's how stupid this whole argument is.
It's the old marriage. It's the abusive. How dare you leave me for another? I'm going to teach you how to love me again.
That's right.
It's the same old story.
We'll be back right after this. Yeah. He says Ukraine as a state does not exist. This is the head of the State Duma.
Yeah. It's literally how they think. It's pervasive into their entire culture. They cannot, and this is going to be a big thing for them when they lose this war. It's going to shatter their worldview, because they're so deeply entrenched in this idea of the big bad, the West is seducing Ukraine away. No,
right.
Ukraine is leaving you because you are an awful partner.
Right.
You suck.
Right.
And by the way, fix yourself.
Yeah.
Fix yourself. Do the hard work, fix yourself. And then, it's just they can't wrap their heads around it. It's incredible. And it is cultural. It's not just Putin or the ruling regime. They're taught it from day one that this is that their good little Slavic brother, the Ukrainians, occasionally they kind of have aspirations of independence. So isn't that cute? But then for them to really be like, bags are packed, I'm out the door, I'm going to Europe, then it's like, and it'll be curious to see what happens when they lose it. It'll be very interesting.
I just find this quote from him to be really telling. It's the happy song. Phil can't hear it, but he can assume.
No, he can.
I can't hear it, but
good.
I'm listening in my head.
Hey, come on. Let's take it
I hope
easy.
that you like cereal.
Woo, woo.
Woo.
Smile together.
I'll make you breakfast in the morning.
Hope that you like cereal. I
Mhm.
do.
Cereal.
Yeah, we got through it.
I do like cereal.
There.
Yay.
I mean, we have a lot to be, happy about in the context, though, of very difficult, painful struggles going on in this in the war right now. That it's you start getting an idea, and I do not claim this for myself, but you get an idea of what like media and music was like during World War II, and the musical styles and the kind of like we'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, where they tried to like smile through the pain type of stuff that was the norm back then. It makes a tremendous amount of sense when you look at the sadness of what's going on, and yet the empowering, I wouldn't even call it joy or happiness, just the encouragement when
The
things
refusal
are
to let
bow.
it is the refusal of the Ukrainian people to let the Russians dictate how they live their lives, including whether or not they are depressed,
Right,
and saddened, and all the rest of it. 100%. See it every day.
right.
Every day I see it. Yeah.
So, and there's a, like I said, I would say that EU package, and that them coming to that agreement, and that Zelensky's at the G7, and they are treating him with the respect that he deserves for what he's been through, what he's going through, and what he's managed to pull off. That in and of itself is a piece of good news. The power of normalcy. I mentioned earlier in the show that the jobs numbers in the United States are even better than we thought they were last month, because it turned out that there was a massive attempt at unemployment insurance fraud in Massachusetts to the tune of about 3,000 filings in one fell swoop in a month that turned out to be fake, and they were caught. That's good news. Yeah. And so the job stuff here is even better than we thought. And of course, the Durham report was a dud and is hilarious, and watching everybody flail at that, we're enjoying that as well. And Trump's facing perhaps another E. Jean Carroll lawsuit, because after he was ordered to pay her $5 million, he went on another television show and said the same damn thing like an idiot.
He's such a moron.
Yeah, it's
Such
beautiful.
a moron.
It's kind of nice when you see somebody walk into a rake like that repeatedly. And
Over
I don't know.
and over again.
And the other good news is that Nerd Halen is playing tonight at the Glass Cactus here in Grapevine, Texas, which is right outside of Dallas.
Well, here's a little secret, little bit of information. It's not a conspiracy, but take a wild guess as to one of my dinner companions that I bailed on your show for on Wednesday. Take a wild guess who it might have been.
The Malcolm of the Nance, Malcolm of the House Nance.
Yes, our mutual pal Malcolm Nance was back in town for a brief visit, and he was in the dinner party, and it was lovely to see him. He's doing well. Lots of things. He's headed back, so he's already out of the country. He may be promised that I wouldn't say anything until he was actually out of the country. So
yeah, because he's actually engaged in
Malcolm.
He's engaged in some
he's
actual right now. Yeah, he's shepherd. He's being a shepherd or something right now, I think, probably.
I think he's kind of ashamed of being.
He's got a lot.
Yeah,
I think he's ashamed of people knowing that he went to dinner with Phil. That's just my take.
He left the whole. He left the country in ignominy,
and rightfully so.
Right? Yeah, I went out to dinner with Phil once, and I'm still on an apology tour.
Still scarred. Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you bleep that part out? I don't think it's good for Johnny's rep if it gets out.
But I did actually spend some time with him. It's always weird to interview a buddy
Yes.
But
I know.
I actually did finally pulled out a camera, set it up properly, lit it, proper audio, and I've got an interview coming with Malcolm in
excellent
in the next day or two.
Excellent.
And some other interviews that I've been conducting as well. So yeah, Malcolm was here and we hung out a little bit and tossed ideas around. And he's meeting with people, and so I'm getting information from him based on that and all sorts of stuff. So there's a lot going on here, obviously.
Yes.
It's going to get a lot more kinetic. It's good. There's going to be a lot more, sadly, fighting and dying. But I am strongly optimistic about the capabilities of the Ukrainian armed forces. We have the Patriot missile system working now here in the capital. So there's that. We're still, it's still tough, but I've cause for optimism.
I will say one of the other kind of funny side stories that's going on is in the G7 is that apparently Lula, the new leader of Brazil, is all in a twist because he doesn't know if he should meet with Zelensky. He's worried that this will upset Russia because he had just met with this sort of BRICS workaround that China and Russia are trying to do. Throws a monkey wrench in them, but
not to mention South Africa,
right? Well, yeah. The the
whole
South
BRICS
Africa in the
thing,
G7?
the whole BRICS umbrella.
Yeah,
no, the whole BRICS thing as an umbrella has been really tested by this whole crisis. But I'll leave.
Well, I talk about the economic garbage that poses as the BRICS group a lot on my show on the regular, and I have yet to be impressed by anyone's defense of it in any form, especially compared to the G7. And I think Brazil knows that. Lula has to know that, and he can't. That's why he's in a twist, because he needs Russia to some degree for, he's got this unilateral meeting with them that he thinks is going to work out. But at the same time, they need the G7 as their main, the buyers of their output.
Again, Johnny.
Oh, well, trust me, what I said was genius. We're almost out of time. Anyways, Johnny, give him another question on our way out the door.
Here comes another question. Can you hear me, Phil?
Yeah.
I think this is from Twitch. Can the war end without a change at the top in Moscow?
Yeah, sure. It can. He will then be a custodian leader of Russia until the ruling class can figure out somebody to replace him with. But yeah, in the immediate term, Ukraine could restore 1991 borders, and Putin could hold on by his fingertips. He could also do a bunch of crafty, nifty kind of things where he shuffles the blame to somebody else. But the clock has already started on Putin's time in office, and it will end before too long. But if you're talking about will there be victory in Ukraine and then instantly Putin will be deposed? No, there are lots of scenarios where Putin is put off in exile in Elba, in his Sochi mansion, and pretends to be president, but it's really controlled by the ruling class.
Right.
Or they find another replacement, but there'll be a process and he's just a caretaker. But he's not going to he won't survive it. No, in the long term, the medium to long term, he will not survive this defeat. But in the short term,
let Phil know. I want to remind everybody on our way out the door, follow at Johnny Million on Twitter, at Philip Ittner on Twitter, 1L, 2Ts, at Hal Sparks, of course, until we all move to Post or something. We'll figure out. We're going to do a big mass march at some point. I have no doubt. Once news starts aggregating to another site, that's where everybody's going, because that's the only thing that Twitter has right now that other people don't have. And that'll all change relatively soon, I think. I would give it 3 months. Meanwhile, one of the things about the Lula situation with Zelensky at the G7 is that it totally torpedoes the idea that America, controls South America, or we're trying to, and that we force our, everybody to bow down to our will. Because Biden supported Lula in the election, said they, and basically the Brazilian people chose Lula. It wasn't even that they backed one particular candidate, but the illusion was that they were, and that Lula was the the progressives, the lefties, loved Lula and still do. They love what he does with Russia and the like. But interestingly enough, the United States is not trying to depose or oust or create a coup to get rid of Lula, as they supposedly always do in South America. No interest whatsoever. Now, either the United States has given up on that as a ploy and the overlords won't let it happen anymore, or it does matter who you vote for, and that's the nightmare that the tankies in that crowd have to face. It does matter who's in office. And with Biden in office, you're getting closer to the constitutional worth of the country and the meaning of the flag that we all like so much. Thank you, Philip Ittner. Thank you, Johnny Million. Thank you, Chicago.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks so much.
And Chicago, and thank you.
Boy, oh boy.
Thank you, Chicago.
Pretty good for Texas.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll be. Yeah.
Wow.
Next Saturday, it'll be a lot easier. You know why? You know
Boys
why?
and girls.
You know why?
What?
Why would next Saturday?
Because you're going to be in Chicago.
That's right. I'm going to be in Chicago next weekend.
Oh, you're going to go to the
Yay.
studio?
So so I'm going to do it from the
Oh.
studio. So that'll make it a lot
Great.
easier for everyone.
Well,
Oh, my God.
We hope. I may even get in there and set up my cameras while the other show is going on, so that I don't have to plug in everything all at once. But Johnny can help me.
right. I've made a note. HAL
Help me
in
get-
Chicago.
That's right. We're going to be in studio that day, so that'll at least eliminate you and I being
Oh,
able to
good.
hear each other as a problem. And so bringing Phil in should be a lot easier, and we can even have a backup situation there. That would be lovely. So yeah, next weekend I'm doing the show from Chicago. We have a family gathering there. Summer's family's got a graduation where it's graduation season.
It is.
And so
All right.
so I'm coming in for that, and so that'll be way easier.
Yay.
Yes, this Wednesday.
All good.
This Wednesday, Phil,
Oh.
we're on. We're good for this Wednesday.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, the delegation is left. I'm going to put the thing with Malcolm up probably tomorrow or next day, and then I had another really heavy-hitting interview that I'll put up as well.
Awesome. Very exciting.
But yeah, Wednesday. I'll be
Love
here.
it. And then also, so I'm gonna fly to the jam this week and rent a car so that I'm not completely exhausted, because I'm burning the candle at both ends and trying to light the middle right now. And I didn't get.
You're moving around a lot, that's for sure.
Dude, I didn't get a half hour uninterrupted sleep for 24 hours yesterday, from flying in to getting in the morning. After I slept 3 hours, and then
Worst
after
feeling.
that it was
hate
because
that feeling.
the hotel didn't have my reservation when I got here.
Oh,
It's just a
no.
little inside baseball. Yeah, so it took a little bit of time. They were very nice. It's I'm never one of those. I don't stomp my foot. I know it'll get figured out. I just relax and let them work it out. But the next day, apparently they fixed it, but they only had me in here for a day, and I'm here till Sunday.
Oh,
So
God.
starting after my morning show, I was like, okay, I'll nap between there and the next show or whatever. Every 20 minutes,
No.
housekeeping.
Yeah,
Housekeeping.
sure.
And I put the do not disturb out there, and I was like, why is this happening? And then finally one of them went, "Are you checking out?"
Because your booking
And
was
I-
over.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I was
your
like,
booking was
"Oh
over.
my God, they think I'm checking." And so
Uh,
yeah, so I remedied it, but Jesus
no.
Christ. And then it got into my second piece of press that I had to do, and then I did my show, and then and then the guys, were talking to me while I'm coming in. I'm like, I'm going to bed. I have to eat, go to
Yeah.
bed. So
Can
I
you
finally
nap
slept
before the
last-
show tonight?
No. I slept last night
sorry.
though. I slept last night. I slept
good.
pretty well, because I just blew everyone off and went to bed.
Do you need
But I
fresh
would-
towels?
Huh? That's none of your business, and I'll thank you to stay out of my personal affairs.
Someone in
All right.
chat asked, Paul Young.
No, Paul, leave me alone.
Somebody in the chat asked.
All right. Anyways,
Sure.
I love you guys. I will see you later.
And is your
Take care.
girlfriend in Canada involved?
That's
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Take care, guys.
She
Totally
goes to a
smart.
different school.
Smarter than you are.
I'll talk
All right,
to you
I'll
on
talk-
Wednesday,
Okay.
Al.
All right.
All
Bye,
right.
See you,
guys.
John.
Bye, everybody.
All right,
Okay. Bye. Thanks, chat, for hanging out, and Thanks for limping through the tech aspects. By the way, when I'm looking up like this, this is where I had the source audio and video for. I'm using the TV in the hotel room as a second monitor, and so that's if my eye line is going up there. It was to check to make sure that the meters on the audio were moving where they should, and hopefully not where they shouldn't, and making sure that the window that I have these guys open in was visible so that I could actually source them. Now I can shut that window. And man, does it eat up a lot of bandwidth. But I managed, and by the way, I was like through the whole show, I'm like turning off pieces of software wherever I can. Like I'm like, okay, what can I absolutely not live without, and what can I limp around or use on maybe in my iPad or something that's not on this computer and this Wi-Fi source, and that's a lot. It's fun, whatever. I kind of miss the old days when I could use radio cred to barge into a radio studio and go, hey, can I borrow one of your facilities? Because they'll let you do it sometimes. Like there's this like unspoken radio treaty that you can go, hey, I do the show at Chicago, and they carry one of your shows. So is there a chance I could bump in there? That kind of thing. Anyways, love you guys. I'm gonna check in with the band and let's see. Shall I check in with them right now while I'm on the air with you guys? Let's see. Reservations are only for one night, and I went down and fixed it for all of it. Oh, they did the same thing happened to them. Okay, Just anybody could. I did not. Me neither. I'm going to go have coffee. They're going to thing. Switch it to it now. Okay, good. They did this thing. 6 p.m. Might change earlier. Showtime's at 9:30. Load in is at 6. How are you returning your rental car? But I'm driving it there, dropping it off. Good Lord. Don't worry about it, Dave. I've got an angle. All right. Anyways, love you guys. I love interband silliness. Much love to you guys. We'll do a documentary. We have to do like a Spinal Tap like documentary for 1 gig of Nerd Halen. Someplace weird. When we go someplace fresh, like New Jersey or New York, when we play there, I swear to God, I'm going to hand everybody a GoPro and make them record their own like BTS footage of like unpacking and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to cut it together into our own 1 single gig Spinal Tap, because it will absolutely be like that. And the hard part will be cutting it down from 3 hours, because there will be so much accidental comedy gold. All right. Anyways, love you guys. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. And I will see you in my normal seat. And you know how I mean that, on Monday. All right. And those of you that are seeing us tonight, we will have, by hook or by crook, a meet and greet. We don't have the same casino problems that we have in Vegas, for example. We'll definitely be able to, say hi to people at the merch table or whatever, at the very least. And if we can't, I'll come out to the parking lot. So fear not, and we'll see you soon. Okay, bye. Oh, wait, where's that?